Let's get started. We are on section 2 of Never, and we are on the poem Hunger. And it starts with this quote: "Midday, as if 12 princes sat before a king," says Wallace Stevens. 11:54. 13 fullest oranges pooling at the foot of their tree, in the crater carved out to contain water at watering, rolled down, touching each other, gleaming at watering, heard the early morning hiss and deeper lengthenings right in the bird sound, sometimes cutting all the way through as pouring forth got closer. Also heard the soil in the cool taking the water in, but can't tell how to card it, hear it out now. The 8-foot yucca on its almost straight peeling back stalk, casting a perfect, sharp black crown, also halo, on the ground right at its own foot, so that it grows out of its own reflection, or no, out of the reflection of its blossom head, the stalk, not visible in shadow, packed wholly into the eye of the ground crown, which the actual stem starts up to cause, the cause of the crown, yucca leaves, now in the third dimensional, traveling out in all directions, holding the watery sunlight, most in the deepest nesting, center-driven parts of each individual leaf, but in the widest cases, traveling all the way up to the tip, making white-yellow interlacings of sun-bearing fronds twine up with utterly darkened ones. The underside's almost black, me now looking down to see the crown in its second dimension shadow move, boy, dragging a bucket at middle distance, weight in its drag, me watching the actual crown move in its third. 11:57. Wind motion, yucca leaves, shape moving identically in both dimensions, wind motion only damaging the narrative, color, relation, field to ground, in the actual, the shadowed moves with is sun, time, the actual, told time and time again by sun, a story, no illusion, a sheet being flapped out just to the left behind a thatched wall, a woman's voice in the sheet, then snapping, to shake a dry thing out, smell of midday in the sheet, to fold a dry thing up, then song turning to string of words, rising pitch, 11:58, hands gripping, snapping and so forth, in the invisible, high laughter, quick, where words rushed out like song, out of the shadow, illicit. 11:59. Response, then two at once, drone of inevitable unfolding, exfoliating highs of 11:59. Response, above the oranges, trees, full head of fruit, one, largest of all palms, swaying lazily right through the strongest windbursts. 12. Everything moving away from core, all patterning being motion away from origin. The limited number of directions a thing can go in, the buzzard above. The furrows of its feathers, the circling. Where what one can't look straight up at is, where the yellow hose crossing the dirt yard makes its circular loop, no shadow. Where my eye picks it up just as the silence breaks, where I count 6 kinds of leaf, hushing and slurring and engineering them, disappearing. The king down to the one body under the sun moves, a caw in the leaf hissings, making itself their core, also drawing onto them a scale of relative darkenings. Hierarchy hearable as a drawing of likeness towards its own register, the blackness of the crow, nowhere visible, yet fisting the core. 12:01. The loop in the yellow, then the yellow continuing. 12:01. All the fruit darkening. 12:01. A child whining. 12:01. A path when I get to it. The having moved. The given. 12:02. The given son, the befallen. Why is it the thief that gets into heaven? In this description of layer of thieving, In all the leaves' geometry so adamant, as if in enough heat the mind is forced inside to watch, to feel fear, geometry, wrought math, light. Later, the god, repetition without variant, its spouse, inevitable, necessary, variant, its lover, unnecessary, variant, interruption, wall, disease, rot. Later, inevitable, inanimate. Later, what can be broken, always holding what can not. A truth, not a symbol. Grip it in scrutiny. Oh, it's a very abstract way to eat an orange. But if that's the experience Jory Graham can take from eating an orange, um, I will try to eat oranges in the same way, perhaps. Okay. The depth is crazy, or is it? Says Cortez. Yeah. What is depth in a poem like this? Is it, yeah. Is it going as deep as it wants us to think? I have not examined it closely enough. Um, but it's much deeper than the peeling and eating of an orange. And the way she uses time as, like, she lengthens and contracts time by telling us what time it is, which is really interesting technique. Speaking of time, this next poem is called The Time Being. Section 1, Todos Santos. Cluster of bird chatter, a knot at the center of a supreme unfolding, large river pebbles almost filling a jar. Turn it over, where they collide and recollect that grainy, quick, clatterful cluster of bird sound, not near it a browner sound, close up a single note of it in the very thick rope, stiff with age, knotted to a rusted hinge, in it a higher and lower pitch, intermingling, rope squeak and hinge, but that only if the one note, repeated more or less rapidly, in clusters of up to 5, is singled out. Nothing can be singled out. We wait for the dog bark, hearing sun, utterly without glow in it. A thing that blanks out into what we call blindness. Each thing it washes. In the highest background, lymph system screeches, clap of banana leaves, long as a tall child or marlin. Then the dog bark to the far left for a moment just itself. Then the dog bark drawn in, percussive in relation. Then we wait for the first car. Engine rising. We know there's a hill. Then evening out to a smooth hum. Then into the story with fictive presence, even as it crosses through the length of the town, then out. When the woman calls out, it's not as if the netting caught her. She knots up to the far left out of the listening. A small boy suddenly very near to the right taps a glass jar with a metal implement. Then he taps a different openness. The listening. One is the first of the fishermen the net builds, it casts. Still further, the trucks on the highway passing town, the goat bells and cowbells intermingling at the edge of the cane fields. One is first. Then there is a portal, saints pass through it, light over all of it without nearing, but shadows striating. Our shadows is passing in, adding through. One is first, then one is suddenly unable to be first. It is a strange, quick grace. The net shifts hands, is held at the other side, at the far side. Church bell for 17 repeats like lower goat bell. All sounds always reproducible if one rejects name. as something damaged or frayed or about to break from where. One feels the sound deepest in the apparently most worn. In the sunlight, for instance, here, just as I say this, and the chatter rises in a clump, I know not in the response to what. Just here where the sunlight crosses my still and the window sashes lay firm gray-black marks. Aslants the terracotta tiles of floor, here where the whiteness of the vacancy, the palm fronds full of transparency and motion, carry back and forth over floor tiles as grout lines, here where that whitening wind really juts through all strands of the netting, sash, gout, palm frond, and is, of a sudden, made to let up slow down as the caught fish must. Mhm. Part 2. Palm Beach, Todos Santos. The whole of the unfolding, like a skin coming off, stand striated everywhere by the tide action, packed hard onto it in tiny color variations and speckling in runs of diamond pattern where tide has receded. Monkfish with their porcupine quilled, tapering backs all head and side eyes and quickly left by the tides, at tide line with each, lapping, shrimp left at the greenish fanning wave edge. Retreat and more retreat, tire tracks crisscrossing the marbled sandskin. Footprints, bird prints, feathers, broken glass. The fisherman, in the distance on the rocks casting out. Wall breaks, the filament where the backwash breaks and retreats, leaving a pooling white and green. And also brownish, marbled by slickness, a tiny stilling, really, in the regrouping of powers, and on that slickness, flimsy slowness like lung tissue or the white netting from stomach lining they wrap lamb kidneys. In the window, display, slightly fatty and good in baking, where it holds the parts together, then melts off. Having melted off, the skin of the momentary lull where forward and backward motion are ever so briefly equal, feathery too, so soft, but mostly marbled, so hard, yet sloughing snakeskin off with the very next wave and laying that skin onto shore at our feet in sand on sand, palm fronds, feather layerings, accumulations of differently gapped nets at angles not exactly overlapping, drifts of minuscule dune structures building like sound waves, then lowering in sun and fast-moving clouds, making, for the time being, tide coming back in and the fishermen now walking this way carrying off an unusually large catch. The story that got me here, the breaking waves tossing, spume the whole length of the beach, the glassy, tidal retreat zone where the reduced incline allows for a full measure of the sky, every 8 seconds or so to be strewn over the otherwise dark wet sand, a sun, a blueness, clouds clearly moving, the skin of water, giving us, where the earth opens, it must open. Sun in there, one cannot look away, more than one can look at the one above, then the retreat. Sun, clouds, blue, all being taken back into the shorebreak, tossed up in ruffled, airily huge plumes and upcast mists, the looking down, leaving tiny holes where calm and crab and tube worm suck back under, and the water goes down as well as out, and the earth is filling and the earth is shut. The time presses, the sense of one's person numbs as in having been too long in too strong a wind. The idea won't hold as I push it out, then it will, then it is held, not by me. Then it is all gone. The fishermen seen from the back as they disappear through the palms. That was a beautiful poem. so directly inspired by place, but so focused on the individual moments. That's the hallmark of this poetry collection for me. Just really delving into the moment, into the time, and these sequences of events, and just describing them so precisely in abstract terminology, in a really poetic manner, with really interesting, innovative style. Um, I'm a fan. And that takes us to, excuse me, that takes us to section 3 of the book. And we start with another prayer from behind trees. The branchful of dried leaves blown about at the center of the road, turning on itself. Is it a path? Snake, gray brown of drafting drama. Whole affair played out between the wind's quiver, wind's dusty haste, and almost impeccable procedure. Bit of scenery from which all fear is deleted, so it is right here, where I am peering, where I am supposed to discern how the new gods walk behind the old gods at a suitable distance. Okay, breathe. Okay, this is gonna be a fun poem. It's winter, I'm getting all sniffly. Sorry. It's getting cold outside finally. It's been raining for the past 3 days, which has been fun. I got into the mountains the other day. There was snow. That was exciting. Got to ski. But it is not quite ski season. Best time of the year, the winter. I have an interesting relationship with winter. Um, yeah, Cortez, I agree with you. It is in part the best time of the year. But I have like a very sentimental attachment to winter for some reason. So I get very dreary and depressed in it, but I carry this sentiment for this depression. So I really enjoy it. Like upon reflection. Um, that sounds kind of strange, and it is strange. Um, it's very poetic, at least, and I get to ski, and that makes up for everything. But I love the darkness and the cold and the snow, and how harsh the world gets for a little while. Um, because then we counter it with the coziness of our human habituation. It is, yeah. Cortez says it feels real, and winter is real. It feels, yeah, like the cold really makes you feel alive. When that crystalline air gets into your lungs, you're like, oh, that's what it's like to breathe. We, yeah, it makes us not take for granted the things we often take for granted. As does the brutal heat of summer if you live in a very hot place. But anyway, Exit Wound by Jorie Graham. The apparently sudden appearance of blossoming out afresh, out of reach, aiming for extinction, abandonment, other fossils, then again, no fossils, because of having previously lived on Earth, deviating and branching into use and disuse, what in it that is transmitted by heredity that cannot help the lowest plants and animals. What is the lowest? Where ends environment? He was therefore unable to provide a unitary theory of evolution. To use reason to arrive at faith, to bring the sacred into the branchings of the unreasonable, the blue between the branches pulling upwards in a way so that the branches become branching, their tips failing at what comes to be called distance. As if by too much compromise, straining towards justice till it cannot but fail alongside faith, leaping always the demon, the comparative, the presence. Only the mind can do this of inner feeling up against living force. What exists without having been perfected or made complex? What exists without having been made? What exists without having been, therefore unable to provide a unitary theory of evolution, of regret? What exists inside the sensation of duration? Inside duration, where is the aside to go? How far under, or is it into? And then the aside, the offhand, half formulated, half heard, but yet still living breath of a thinking, down in the deep station of feeling, though still barely out. Lined so as to be branching, as certainable and seizable as to be dragged up. There, she thought. Is my thought before me like a planted thing in its pot, not quite in nature, yet still alive, and, most crucially, self-evident? And that I can feed it. Yet she was unable still to provide a unitary theory. It is, she thought, looking away momentarily, so that looking back it could be there more fully in all its glory, her thought, however small, a catastrophe, leafing and branching, making of itself a higher and a lower part, catastrophic down to its shadows cast upon the floor, branchings so still where the leaf ends sway. In the breeze the curtains have touched and left off outside, she thought, the point of origin. They can call it, if they wish, she thought, the supreme being blossoming out afresh, feelings as if one had previously lived elsewhere on earth. Out of reach even of catastrophe, there had been, she knew, extensive extinctions. Her thinking this now, deep in the duration, wanting so to come back up, but up into what organism of time, or is it organization of the lasting, the minutes? For example, the sensation of there being somewhere clocked out in a resistant form, a wage, for example, attached to their beginnings and endings, somehow capable of being exactly cut off. That not catastrophic, therefore, for example, not the organism of catastrophe like a shaft of light breaking down through the crowning trees just now, in the just now, as she looked out. And she could be associated with it. For example, the instant of looking up and light breaking through. Could she be imbricated into the fate's non-durational nature? For example, even the recess in which these, for examples, go, always in it, all levels of inwardness. The progress by the abandonment of some aspects of creation to fate. We call this progressionism, but there is also the correlation of parts in order to determine the space to which we each belong. Or could it be felt or thought that everything happening now was strictly connected to something that happened in the past? As was the word happened stopped her. The problem, as always, was the problem of how something could come out of nothing. There was no other question. Inside her, the nothing. She could just feel it, and before her, the plant on the table, the something, the thought of the nothing, for example, the creator loomed, as it always happens, outside, a bit far away, but still filling in for the unexpected. She heard the kitchen clock's gears and also the noon church bells on the far hill. She thought of the idea of happiness, where to place that, like a string of Christmas lights dropping down into a darkened well or tomb. Was it catacomb? She saw the images flash on and off, according to the swinging of the lights. Down there, she thought of happiness, the principal part of the thinking of the thing, its highest part, still reachable from up here by the mind, she thought, as though a pronounced looking down. Vertiginous, a squinting, yes, but as if one species of oneself could look back far enough. Although, of course, here it was down. To see the previous existent one had been. The mark of design, thereupon the gap. Between them now, the Christmas lights. The swaying intermittence of the hiddenness between the frequencies. She felt as if she could reconcile this present to that one, and that the thinking wanted that so, and that it strived. Some interesting thoughts. We get theology, we get this grand skepticism and questioning of evolution, um, the typical evolution questions. What started it all? She asks that. Um, the problem, as always, was the problem of how something could come out of nothing. And that is the problem. That's the question, isn't it? And yet here we are. Conscious, talking, reading poetry, talking about poetry. Funny how that works. Milo Davila has joined us. Thank you. So glad to have you here. We're drinking red wine and reading Jorie Graham. And it's almost 10 at night. So we'll read another poem. Ooh, maybe two. Mm, that was long, but I think I have to read two more. We'll read two more. Funnily enough, this next poem is called Evolution. One's nakedness is very slow. One calls to it. One wastes one's sympathy. Comparison, too, is very slow. Where's the past? I sense that we should keep this coming. Something like joy rivulets along the stand. I insist that we go in. One cannot keep all of it. What is enough of it? And keep? I am being swept away. What is keep? A waking good? Visibility blocking the view. Although we associate the manifest with kindness, the way it goes where it goes, slight downslope, the words suddenly, the incline it causes, also the eyes, wild joy sucked down the slope by the minutes wave by wave. Pat down and slick, the journey, some journey, visits one. The journey, some journey, visits me. Then this downslope once again, and how it makes what happens always more heavily laden, the self only able to sink, albeit also lifting as in a sudden draft, into the future, our future, where everyone is patient, where all the sentences come to complete themselves, where what wants to be human still won't show its face. And Martin Garcia is with us after that poem, during that poem, at the beginning of that poem. But we're reading Never, so time doesn't matter. Time is lucid and fluctuating, um, as on this evolutionary journey. Gotta take a breath. This next poem's 4 pages. It's gonna be fun, but there's no section breaks. It's just 4 pages of free verse. It's gonna be a good time. Mm. Thank you, Martin. I am doing well. Um, I should probably eat tonight, and that would make me even better. But I've been climbing. Now I'm reading poetry. Got over half an exam done today, like 2,000 words. Um, Excellent. I hope you're well, wherever you may be on this wonderful winter evening. I'm feeling great, albeit slightly mentally drained. But if you're not, where are you up to? We're supposed to be writers here. Okay. Estuary by Jorie Graham. She wondered about the year 1000. She worried the long stretch of horizons, yellow gaping of sea from sky with an uplifted glance. She worried its fixity till it wasn't fixed. She felt the calling herself she as the exact spot she closed her eyes and the whole unspooled miles. Beach, mist, spray, outcroppings, current, drawn, nettings of foam that fanned out in lulls, as if to give the sea a top, a please, a resistant stillness on which to scroll, a flat impenetrability window-like out onto a dark that allows only for this reflection, this side's insistence to lay itself upon the glancing pane, foaming scripts, eyes that follow and follow, frantic with indirection. What is history to this instant between the waves? She let herself think. Although she was really thinking, let me think, let me just think it, and it will still and come forth. And there will be, however invisible to others, an enunciation. She put it there again, as if onto the flat foamy, widening between waves, right onto its hush, the year 1000. She felt it was a test. All of this, she heard it hard, the word, this. It seemed to furl out as from an opening, a gesture of the mind's geometric in its widening, so firm, the this of the visible, and nothing else. None of the thinking she so laid down hard, the gesture of the practiced plasterer spreading the thin gesso on the church wall, early morning, circa 1000. Flat and clean, this one arc of his firm trowel. Now the arc, at each degree of its wide math, can leave the bodies of sleeping saints and move across the heaven of, the in front, and sometimes a bit above, visible. How odd it all is. Was it better when we were sure losers of the big game and sure vision on our heads like helmets gleaming, moving down river slowly but surely, excavating new metals as we went, opening new trees, crafting new weapons of highest beauty? We were after gold, also, of course, in search of slaves. Where are they? Also victory. What we call saleable value, thirsty. And yet, what is she now that the rimmed gap between water and sky is empurpling? Lay me down at my lord's right hand, though I am white with listening, looking. I will not away. Lay me down by my lord's right hand. We are bloodthirsty, but after legend, after easily removable booty, strong with the gods' consent, also from our forefathers. Payment is required. As I look out, thus lowering the she as well down onto the horizon line, the drawing in towards singleness, pulling in as nets must be pulled in. So she looks out, becoming I, feeling it to be a test, counting the lowering pelican squadron as it rides the golden crest of one wave, banking this side then that of it, dipping as low as breaking allows. Fantastic touching down behind the break, not unpredictable except by me and some of us. Not you, Lord, you, but that is love. That beseeching sound in the core of the self. Also the frigate birds who bank their black and sheer, white scissoring tails, dowsing for wind in priestly strictness. 12 circling in a cantata now, then a variation left and right to reconverge, sometimes as raiders, coming up river for nubile girls or even wives, their thanes forced to look on, then banked at the edge of human peripheral vision, then circling back. Above the fishing spot, the break, and just behind the break, the lull. How can I say how much is in the lull in pursuit of casual beauty? Casual beauty, who had territorial ambitions, carrying down river toward this mouthing, whose value the king could easily appreciate. Song, the notes of the inaudible frigate fugue, regrouping to the gorgeous asymmetries of center. A prosperity, even duples and triplets in there, line up strong stress, then liquefaction. A large sum of money being counted and recounted, a sum being paid in tribute. Out of fear being recounted again, they part Grow single, drop, regroup out of fear. Gold, the watching eye, never able to count out the tribute, unable to get its defense organized. Everyone on the beach now waiting for the fishing boats. What there is readiness and waiting, and chance earlier near noon, the man and his son sleeping in the slim shadow on the boat caisson, the sand, nestled up against the blue stripe of boat bottom keel, stray asleep in another pool, ticking of trucks cooling down, morning sail long gone, called out prices. Thrift need quickness. Also the trying every angle from the instant the small craft touched down. Also dogs lapping, pelicans, seagulls, frigates, the one sea lion, she looked into the dark eye. She tried every angle. The solution to the invaders' debilitation was to buy off the raiders protection, money, paying them to go away, gold, unearthed by modern archaeologists. Modern. Am asked to look, she has slimmed so, to where? I cannot quite much longer see, am asked by what? The god, not total conquest. Loyalty, we are where the river spills, and sea is all. Whew. Finishing that up right at 10. Again, beautiful imagery of the estuary, the gulls, the pelicans, the seabirds, the frigate birds. What happened in the year 1000? What gold deposits were left? Who was paid off? And by what? Hmm. The gorgeous asymmetries of center, which is an interesting image in relation to this entire poem, I guess, where we see this like asymmetry in a circular ideal of time almost. It's almost what she's pointing at. Because we're always circling around this image of the ocean, um, but always in a slightly different way and always from a different angle. Um, and it's not symmetrical. It's something different, something maybe like fractalized almost in an asymmetrical way. I guess that's the best imagery for Jorie Graham's poetry in this book. It is a coastline. It's a fractal. Um, and you think you can see it, you think you can trace it, but it just keeps going deeper and more fine and more refined. So I'm really enjoying reading her poetry. And I was really glad to get back to this tonight. Um, I have another book of Polish poetry that I might read later this week. I think instead I'm going to pick up a Gary Snyder book or a Kenneth Rexroth or there's another guy from the Beat area or time period that I really like, who I might pick up. I'd have to find his name because that's not helpful, is it? So we'll probably be back tomorrow night, and I'll see you when I see you.